Snow fell softly over the prairie like it was trying not to wake anyone, blanketing the land in a quiet that made loneliness louder. And Clara Whitmore stood just outside the small boarding house window, watching the warm glow inside. While her stomach ached with hunger, she pretended not to feel, because hunger was something she had learned to live with long before she ever answered an advertisement promising a new life in the West. Christmas Eve had come whether she was ready or not, and while laughter drifted from inside plates clinking, voices rising in cheer, Clara held her thin shawl tighter around herself, knowing she was not expected at that table, knowing there would be no supper for the May Lorder bride who had arrived with a single suitcase and a heart full of hope that now felt dangerously fragile. The townsfolk had been polite enough, but politeness does not fill a plate, and when the boarding-house keeper had gently told her there wasn't enough food to spare, Clara nodded and thanked her, because pride was the last thing she still owned. She walked slowly through the snow toward the edge of town, where the lights thinned and the wind sharpened, her boots worn, her hands numb, her thoughts drifting back to the letter that had brought her here, a rancher's careful handwriting, honest but distant, promising work, shelter, and a chance to build something real. His name was Illy Carter, and she had not yet met him. He was late, they said, delayed by weather or cattle or fate itself. Clara reached the hitching rail near the general store and sat down, breathing shallowly to quiet her hunger, when the sound of approaching hooves cut through the night. Illy Carter reined in his horse under the lantern light, exhaustion etched into his face, snow clinging to his coat, and when he saw her sitting there alone on Christmas Eve, something in his chest tightened. "Missed, are you, Clara?" he asked, voice low and unsure. She looked up, startled, then nodded. "Yes, sir." Illy hesitated only a second before dismounting. He had imagined this meeting a dozen times. None of them like this, none involving a woman trying not to shiver from cold and hunger while the town celebrated without her. "You eaten?" he asked gently. Clara shook her head, embarrassed. Illy said nothing more, only led her toward his horse, offering his hand to help her up. At his ranch, the cabin was small but warm, the fire already lit, and on the table sat a single plate of food he had prepared for himself before riding into town. Without a word, Illy set the plate between them, broke his bread in half, and pushed the larger portion toward her. "It's Christmas Eve," he said simply. "No one should go hungry tonight." Clara tried to refuse, but her voice failed her, and when she finally took a bite, tears slipped down her cheeks, not from the food but from the kindness behind it. They ate in silence, a silence filled not with awkwardness but with understanding, two strangers bound together by circumstance and quiet decency. And as the fire crackled and the snow continued to fall, Clara realized that this small act, this shared plate, meant more than any promise written on paper ever could. If this tender beginning has touched your heart, subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. Morning arrived softly, pale winter light slipping through the frost-rimmed window, and Clara woke unsure for a moment where she was, until the scent of coffee and the sound of boots on the wooden floor reminded her that she was no longer alone, that the night before had been real, and that kindness had found her when she least expected it. Illy moved carefully around the cabin, as if afraid to disturb something fragile, and when he offered her a mug of coffee, their fingers brushed, a simple touch that carried more meaning than words. They talked then, slowly, honestly, about expectations and fears, about how life had carved them into careful people, and Illy admitted he had never been good with grand gestures or promises, only with work and showing up when it mattered. Clara told him about the road that brought her here, about choosing hope even when it felt foolish, and Illy listened like every word mattered, because to him it did. Christmas Day passed not with gifts or celebration, but with shared chores, shared laughter when mistakes were made, and a growing sense that something steady was forming between them, not romance, born of fantasy, but respect built on action. When neighbors arrived later with apologies and baskets of food, having heard what had happened, Illy welcomed them without bitterness, and Clara thanked them without resentment, because the lesson had already been learned. That evening they sat by the fire again, a fuller table between them now, and Illy spoke quietly. "I don't know what kind of husband I'll be," he said, "but I know what kind of man I want to stay." Clara met his eyes, calm and sure. "That's enough," she replied. Outside, the stars burned bright over the snow-covered land, and the cabin glowed with a warmth no storm could touch, because sometimes the greatest Christmas gift isn't abundance, but the moment someone chooses to share what little they have. And in that choice, two lonely lives began something neither had dared to hope for. If you believe in stories of kindness, quiet love, and second chances, subscribe to the channel for more powerful Western tales like this one.